Hello, and welcome to the Discovering Your Heart podcast with myself, Bianca Kempe, your host. What does it mean to live from the heart? What does it truly mean to listen to the wise whispers from within? And how can you begin to make the shift back from the head to the heart? The Discovering Your Heart podcast explores the various heroes' journeys of discovering and connecting back to one's own heart, including the challenges, ups, downs, magical synchronicities, and the trust required to listen and eventually follow the call. With courage comes the unfolding of magic, connection to true purpose and meaning, and the path to your destiny. Join me as we explore conversations with channelers, teachers, rebels, scientists, and more, covering topics about heart intelligence and coherence, the path of the rose, and how to more deeply connect to your own inner guidance. Be part of the movement, a return to the heart.
I'm Lynnclaire Dennis, and I'd like to introduce you to a new scientific knowledge about the nature of our interconnectedness. My role in this work emerged following a near-death experience where I met by my grandmother, and a reunion with my dad and others who died freed me from fear, because clearly death is a new beginning, not the end. Hearing a sublime music and watching geometry tie a rainbow into a pattern that I knew was love actually gave me a reason to live. Returning to my life meant making a promise to remember that pattern, and for the last 30 years I've worked with a team of scientists whose only goal was to disprove that it had anything to do with living, dying, science, or spirituality. Sound remains the strongest strand of connection in my life today. Music is a universal language, and it forms bonds that connect us over time. Not many know that the word religion actually means to connect. So do the words yoga, karma, sutra, curve, yoke, and knot. Frequency is the heart of creation. Your DNA is a chain of connections and carries the instructions you need to live, grow, and procreate. After years of investigation, we used the pattern's inaudible frequencies to vibrate a few drops of water, and experts who said nothing would happen were stunned when a sphere of blue light appeared, spun rings, and blossomed into the matrix. We repeated the experiment, but this time used the sounds of the heart and brain, and the same pattern appeared in both. Research showed how this pattern connects everything and made it clear how this knowledge could help us build stronger social connections. To make this a reality, we created a lifelong learning project called Belonging. It's a series of unique experiences, courses, apps, and meditation tools that let you connect with yourself so you can then build healthy relationships. Knowing how everything fits lets us design simple solutions to complex challenges. Join us to consciously co-create a vibrant, living legacy of love.
Welcome, Lynnclaire Dennis, to the Discovering Your Heart podcast. It's such an honor to have you here. Lynnclaire has been a dear friend and mentor for me for many years now, and it's really such an honor to have you here, for you to share your miraculous story of life with us, and in hopes to inspire other people out there who have that little inkling in their heart telling them to take a certain path or direction in life, and maybe need just some words of encouragement, or to hear the stories of others to know that that voice is truth. So welcome, Lynnclaire. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today.
Oh, B, it's great to be here. I can't believe you're not in Spain still. I wish you were back, not in Mexico.
I know. It has been an interesting year, hasn't it? And when time permits, of course, we will be back there. And yeah, so Lynnclaire, you are in the south of Spain right now. Would love to have you just introduce whatever you'd like to share about yourself in some brief words, and then we'll dive right away into your story. So.
Wow. Well, you know, the first 30 years of my life were spent doing what other people wanted me to do, or guessing what other people wanted me to do. And then especially you've known me for almost 12 years. Can you believe it? 2009. So yeah, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it took dying. It took a real crash for me to decide that it was time for me to live my life. But dying also gave me a purpose for that life. And I think the hardest thing for the last 33 plus 1 years has been having to forego what other people think, having to surrender that need um, to know for myself that my purpose is correct and that I'm living that purpose on purpose, and being able to surrender others to their path and to what they need to be doing for themselves. When you've lived your life with a fear of abandonment and rejection for 3 decades, and then all of a sudden wake up to authenticity and realize that you're the only author. You're the only one authorized to be the author of your life story. It's like, how many chapters am I writing now? So that's what I'm up to. I've been doing it for a long, long time, and it's been, as you know, running under the radar for a lot, because a lot of people wanted me to um, play my story. They wanted me to live my story, and that's just not something I could do. We're as sick as our stories. And it's so we just, for me to heal, it meant to live my life and my purpose on passion as it unfolded, as I remembered. And so that's where I am, and it's all about one thing, being you. I hate to think how many times you've heard me say this. It's about bringing heavenly minded ideas down to earth for earthly good, because right here in this moment is the only place that we can actually know for sure that what we say and what we do matters. Because our next breath is a promissory note, it's not a promise. And so it's the tone, it's how we say what we say that is what it's all about. And as you know, Donnie changed my life, but it wasn't about, the message that I have is not about death. It's not about dying. It's not about a near-death experience. It's about having a full-on, whole life experience. And that's what my work is all about, is experiencing who you are.
That's so beautiful. And Claire, thank you. And before we dive into the juiciness of your work, I can't wait to share it with everyone. I would love to hear a bit more in detail of that pivotal moment, what you just said, that near-death experience. And I know there were several, and kind of your life before that, what happened, and then what happened to you in that moment that then just gave you that burst of knowing, to then dedicate your life to your purpose.
Well, like I said, I grew up guessing at what normal was, trying to be normal, trying to be accepted. My dad was a minister. No one ever told me that the preacher's kids were expected to be the worst of the lot. So I lived on a pedestal. I put myself there, trying to be and do perfect, be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect friend, and always felt like a failure no matter what I did. And went on to go to study theology, what my father wanted me to do. Married the man my father wanted me to marry. Uh, my daily prayer was, give me this day my daily delusion. And I finally came to a point when I was 31 years old that I realized I'd rather be dead than continue to live a lie, not a life. And I had a health crisis, and a very, very wise doctor actually said to me, Lynnclaire, what do you want me to say at your funeral? And I said, is it cancer? And how long do I have? And he said, no, it's not cancer, but you don't have long unless you change your life. I said, well, how do I do that? And he said, well, the best place I think to start is with a divorce. Well, I grew up in a family where divorce was not allowed. And but it was, at that point, it was not an option. And so I chose the hard road. I had to break all the family rules, had to break all the family laws, had to leave my dysfunctional family, and of course, jumped out onto my own into the business world, and soon recreated for the next 3 years, the epitome of perfection of dysfunctionality, chasing more and bigger and better, the so-called dream. And in 1987, I moved to Chicago. I had met a man, I'd been introduced to someone, and we planned a big wedding and went off on our honeymoon to Europe. That was 1986 rather. And in January of 1987, we were participants in the International High Altitude Balloon Race across Austria, racing from west to east. And the race actually was canceled because it was a 100-year winter. And on the very last day of what was supposed to have been this high altitude balloon race, there was clear skies at 5,000 feet, and they said we could fly. And a little bit of a mutiny went on, because I thought 5,000 feet in a hot air balloon, I don't think so. Long and short story of it is that the pilot went too high without the use of oxygen. They'd actually forgotten to put the oxygen on board. And I remember leaving my body, hearing the pilot say to my partner that we were at 12,000 feet, something over 12,000 feet. And to me, that logic was just perfect, because that was as I made a turn and stepped onto Mount Rainier, which you know well, in Washington State, which was near the home of my grandmother. And I had a fairly classical near-death experience, except that there was no tunnel. I did not go through a tunnel. I literally just made a turn. And my grandmother was waiting for me. She was standing there just like she was expecting me to step down on where I stepped down. And it was the mountain of my childhood. And I was so happy to see her, because she died when I was 11, and I always thought her death was my fault. Long story we're not going to go into. But that healing in that moment, knowing that I didn't cause her death. And so the story is all told in the book, The Pattern. People can probably find a copy now and then. But where everything changed was when I began to make an ascent on what felt like an escalator with no steps. And I knew I was going to the top of Mount Rainier. And I got to the top, and I stepped out, and I've always said I left my right footprint embedded in eternity. And that's when I saw this pattern and the geometry. And Luke Hoffman and I were talking not that long ago. Well, we were talking yesterday, but not about this. And he said, "Oh, I think you left both feet." both feet in eternity, not just one. And he said, maybe someday we'll find them. And I remember seeing geometry. I remember counting. I remember knowing that I had to remember what I was looking at. I was so happy. I thought I was going home, but it was something so familiar. And the music. I mean, yes, we talk about love, but the only word with all capital letters in my first book was not love. It was music. And then I remember, if you've ever had a record player where you pull the needle across the record and you put a scratch in it, you get this horrible company. It was like that happened. The music, it was just like someone was scratching the record, and I felt someone grab my right foot rather, and began pulling me backwards. My left foot, it was not my right foot, my left foot. And I remember twisting, and I still have trouble with my back. And I'm persuaded it's a body memory from that twisting, knowing that I had to look back and remember these details. And hypoxia is lack of oxygen to the brain. and I suffered a hypoxic cerebral episode, much like a stroke, what many people would recognize as a stroke. Um, they did not find me. It was my partner who was a physician and the pilot. They were suffering from lack of oxygen. They didn't find me until we were over 20,000 feet in the air, over 7,000 meters. And so um, he was attempting to revive me, and then it took a couple of hours apparently to land the balloon, and it's quite a story, but it was a long journey towards healing. And I was locked in. I was just angry. That was, and they kept saying it's the brain injury that's causing your anger, and I couldn't speak. I mean, my words would just drop out. And the neurologist at the University of Chicago said I'd never walk or talk normally again, and I said, thank goodness, because I'm tired of trying to walk and talk normally. I've got to figure out, what's natural, what's real for me, what's authentic to me, because normal is, most people don't even know that normal isn't based on anything special. It's based on abnormality, what's considered abnormal. So a year after the accident, I was struggling, and I finally said, I need to go to Mount Rainier. I need to go back to Mount Rainier. If that's where I left, that's where I can find my way back from. And so that was quite a journey, because I wasn't supposed to make it. They actually put me into a motorhome, and two friends drove me cross country. And I dumped all my medication down the toilet and said to the universe, just one day, to try to remember. And remember has always been the word that's driven me to remember. And from that moment on, it's been listening for the music that I hear all the time, following that direction, knowing that it was something resonating deep within me, but it had to be in harmony, not just with, it wasn't intuition. It's like, I'm not a visual, it's funny that I do art because I'm not a visual person. I'm trying to create what I'm hearing. That's what I'm trying to communicate with my art, is what I hear. So that was the only way I could kind of connect the dots. And that took me to the big island of Hawaii. After 2 years of living in Kailua Kona, it led me to 2 years in the Dalai Lama's monastery there, by invitation. And to my horror, in April of 1994, Nechang Kutan, the Nechang Oracle advisor, spiritual advisor to His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, came with His Holiness. I was privileged to spend a great deal of time with him. He was the first person who helped me make sense of what was going on in my life. And he said, it's time for you to go to the world. And I said, excuse me? And he said, you must take this to the world of science. I said, excuse me? And he said, no. I said, they'll never let me in. And he said, yes, they will. They're waiting for you. And so that was the beginning of my journey, and that brought me to Luke Kaufman and many, many others along the last 26 years.
Wow.
Hard to
And
believe,
so
huh?
I think people are probably anticipating, what is this thing that wanted to be birthed and wanted to be brought to the world of science, something so powerful that even the Dalai Lama himself felt it
Right.
and wanted you to birth it and express it. So maybe you can share a little bit about Mereon.
I'd love to. Well, a lot of people talk about geometry as something sacred. And people ask me all the time what I think about sacred geometry. And my answer has never changed. And that is, everything is sacred. Geometry is not sacred. Geometry is a template for something. Geometry is static. Geometry, life, a living system, is a dynamic system that's moving. So it's Mereon is the first time, many people, you have to go back to 8th grade. That's when you learn about geometry and these things called the platonic solids. Maybe you'll see some of this in the video in the introduction. You will have seen some of that. So many people may not realize, especially in a time of COVID, why we don't have a cure for the virus. Why 40 years after AIDS came on the scene, HIV, why we don't have a cure for AIDS. And it's because of its structure. And it's the same structure as water, the same architecture as water. So the reason we don't have a cure is they've never been able to connect it with the geometry that defines us. If you think back to Da Vinci and the Vitruvian Man, okay, the fivefold symmetry that you see, they don't know how to connect the two. Well, for the first time that we know of, there's no other historical record of all the Platonic solids plus the Kepler solids, which are the 7 fundamental building blocks of creation. They make you who you are. They inform, these are the forms that inform how you function, how all of us function. And so they're all united, dynamically united in this geometry that we call the Mereon Matrix. But they're not just united one time, they're united 3 times, both in the core and the context. It's like a cellular model where you have a boundary and you have a nucleus. But the pattern, so that's all very complex. People get intimidated by the geometry. It's like, oh my God, do I have to say rhombic tricontohedron? No, you don't. Isn't that wonderful? Because the beautiful thing about systems and understanding systems, whether it's dynamic or a lifelike system, which is also dynamic, is that the complexity has to have its equal and opposite. And what is the equal and opposite of complexity? It's simplicity. And simplicity is the knot. It's the Mereon knot. It's that form of connection. It's how everything is connected. And so that's called the pattern of patterns. And many scientists, both natural and social, have been looking for that pattern for decades because it would help them understand how a living system works, how we work. Because not one of us, and boy, have we learned this during COVID, not one of us arrived with our instruction booklets attached to our umbilical cord. Oh, here's how Bianca Kempe will work. Differently than her twin sister, but here's how Bianca works. And so the simplicity that we have is all about the flow, how to grow with the flow. But the geometry, the complexity gives us the questions to ask. And that's what it's all about. Think about how many times you've made a decision and you knew it was the correct decision and it worked and it was just magical. Everything just unflowed for you. And then maybe a month later or 2 months later, you had another decision that was very, very similar and you felt the same way. And you thought, oh, I know how to do that. And you made the decision, but it went sideways. What happened? What did you forget? Well, we have the instruction booklet, but it only has questions. I don't have your answer, but I know the right questions to ask to help you find your answer. And that's what it's all about. So that's what we're up to now. And that's what it's about, helping people discover their universe. Because if you discover your universe, Y-O-U, your universe, then you can build healthy, whole relationships that are real. And I spell relationships R-E-A-L, because we all know what bogus relationships are about. We all know when they're false and when they don't work, and when the need to be right or the need to exert the illusion of control becomes more important than the love that brought you together in the first place. Yeah. That's the only thing that will destroy a relationship. So that's what I'm up to.
Thank you. And I'd love to continue talking about it before we go further, just to kind of I mean, I've been in like learning about this for 12 years now with you. So for me, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But for some people
Right.
listening, just to break it down, basically, you had this near-death experience. You were shown this geometric pattern, and then it took you some time to really remember and then be inspired
4
and
years.
probe.
4
How
years.
long?
Yeah.
4 years. 4 years
4
to.
years. I had a pencil and paper in my hand 24/7 because I always thought I would wake up from a dream. I always thought I would remember it somehow. And I mean, I looked and I looked and I looked and I would see symbols and I'd say, that's almost it, but that's it, but it's not it.
Yeah.
And so what we know is this pattern and the geometry, there's not one spiritual, religious, cultural, mathematical symbol that isn't included.
Yeah, and maybe throughout I will insert and show some of these images. But going back to the story, so it took you some time and then you realized like this is really why I'm here, to remember, recall, and bring forth this information. And in what context do you think really is this going to be most fundamental, or what does your heart say? Like why is it so important to bring this information to the world? What impact is it going to have? What is why?
Right. Well, my why, I made a promise and the words have never left me. And my promise was to remember and to bring, well, sorry. To remember the realm. Well, I need to have a minute. Sorry.
Take a minute.
My purpose was to be a catalyst for change, to bring forth, hold, and honor remembrance, to bring to conscious awareness the realms, realities, and remnants in order that the spirit may remember the dance, and to return the sacred feminine. That's why I'm here. That's not something you do in a day, in a year. That's a lifetime of purpose. But it's not about me. It's about unity. Me, I'm a part of it. But I had to go through that process of remembrance before it could turn into a we. And as you know, there's so many people who have been involved in bringing this to the place that it is. And Alvin Toffler, who wrote Future Shock, described it best. It's all about learning, it's all about unlearning, and it's all about relearning. And it's discovering that you matter, that you count, and most importantly, that you belong, that you're here for a reason. You're here, right now, for a reason. And here we've been given this amazing template, this blueprint, not 2D, not just 3D, but 4D in time. People ask me all the time, Babe, do you believe in God? And I go, if there's one thing that I believe is divine, that knows it all, that holds it all, that has no beginning, has no end, it's past, present, future, it's one, it's time. And we're given the gift of a lifetime. That's why we're here. And so it's how to make the most of the lifetime that we're given. Not living for other people's approval, but coming together and realizing that it's not about me, but you have to know what you want. You have to know what you're willing to live for, your values, in order to discover your vision, your purpose. But it's not about me. My vision isn't my vision. My vision is a shared vision, and it's only come to this point of manifestation in so many ways now because I've done it together with other individuals. You've met many of them. And So it's about realizing that, you know, I like to say there's I don't think a one-man band has ever played Carnegie Hall. It's like it's just noise. And that reminds me of one of our principal investigators who graduated a few years ago at the wonderful age of 92, Dr. Pierre Noyes, theoretical physicist from Stanford. And Pierre always said that Mereon was the hyphen that wasn't there in his name, because his name, Noyes, was spelled Noyes. No, yes, no, yes. And Mereon resolved that for him. And it was, it's finding paradise and paradox in so many ways is what we're up to. So if you want to make a powerful, positive difference, it's like, you know, we don't, I'm working with students at the University of Colorado, and 60, maybe 70 students right now. And we were talking on Tuesday, we had a class on Tuesday, and we were talking about the consequence. Your life is life is consequence, right? Okay. And what determines the quality of your life is the question I would ask.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the answer is simple, because it's the same for me as it is for you. And it's the choices that you make, take or abdicate. Because if you abdicate a decision and say, oh, you decide for me, that's the shame and blame game. So if you're ready to end the shame and blame game and you want to make a new habit, ask yourselves 6 simple questions before you say yes or no. You know this, you've been hearing me, nothing's changed, B. It is so simple. A 5-year-old can play this game. So it's just, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it isn't easy.
Do you want to share the 6 questions right now so people can maybe not jot them down and do this little assignment on their own?
Sure, absolutely. It's a whole lot more fun when we were doing it together in a big group, but I'll put this out there. You know, an intelligent person can be really stupid. We can make stupid decisions. And it's like, I have a good friend who, until she met me, made every single decision in her life based on her intuition. And then she was finally ready to have her accuracy, her good outcome factor go up higher than 50%. So the first question we need to be asking ourselves when we're making a decision is, how does my body feel about this? Physically. If you get goosebumps or you get the heebie-jeebies, I mean, you know, your body's trying to tell you something, okay? That's not your heart talking. That's not your brain talking. That's not your intuition. That's your body. You know, if the smell of something is making you sick, you probably don't want to eat it. Okay? So that's a physical, that's tangible. Okay? So if you get a no, you just say, no, thank you. Guess what? The first time you say no, decision over. Your life has changed. You don't have to get weepy or emotional about it. The second question after physical is, how do I feel about this? Is it in alignment with my values? Is this what I'm willing to live for? You know, you think of a lot of situations where, no, this is not in alignment with my values. And so while it may be okay for your body, it may not be in alignment with your values. And so you have to say, no, thank you. But if it's in alignment with your values and it feels good and it makes you smile, maybe you say yes to yourself, not to the other person. Okay. And then what you have to do is you have to connect the dots. Your brain, that's called neuroscience. Your brain has to make the connections. I've always said your brain is your bullshit detector. And if your brain can make the connections, what happens is you begin to see the bigger picture. Remember the connect the dots paintings children used to do. You probably did them when you were a kid. It's like, it's just dots on a page, no lines until you put them there, and all of a sudden there's a flower or there's a rainbow, whatever is there. So after you've checked in with your brain, if your brain says, oops, no, can't connect this, don't have money for it, can't afford it, it's going to destabilize everything else that's going on in my life. So if you get a no, if your brain says, heart, I'm going to veto this, the brain can veto the heart, the emotional body. Okay? And it's a way of protecting the heart, because faith that you can be brain dead and the heart will still keep on beating. So for me, the heart is why, it wasn't, when I died, I didn't discover my heartbeat. I recovered my heart. I recovered my values. I recovered my vision of myself. I recovered why I was sent to the planet to be here, why I was allowed this gift of this precious lifetime. So when if the brain connects the dots and you get this picture and you go, wow, that's kind of a cool picture, I think that might work. Then you check in with that.
And just a pause. Are you connecting emotional with checking with your intuition and your heart? No.
Back up. We're starting with your physical body.
Yes. And then second, emotional.
Second is emotional. That's your heart. It's your core values.
Your heart, your core. Yeah. So emotional is your heart and almost your intuition as well. No, what you feel.
No, that is a very different type of feeling. Emotions are about feeling. It's not a sense, it's not an intuitive feeling. There's a very clear distinction. So we're talking physical, we're talking emotional, we're talking about the neuroscience I call recognitive. Looking again, to recognize, to recognition. I recognize that. I'm looking at that. I'm reconnecting those dots to make sure that I'm stable. Then comes intuition. After your brain checks in, because I believe that intuition, instinct, gut feeling is our deepest connection with our inner space. And it's a direct link to that whole system, the greater system that we're a part of. So instinct and intuition is like a juggler. You have to see, can I keep all these balls moving? Can I take in one more thing in my life that I can keep it all going? It's asking yourself, do I have space? Do I have room in my life for this? Or is it going to take up space that I need for me? A lot of people don't have much room in their life for themselves. Okay, but after instinct or intuition, or what most men would call their gut feeling, the next reality, and these are our inner realities, inner intelligences, have to do with time. And like I said, I think big time is divine. Small time is timing. So it's the divine time and human timing. And so we have to look in and say, in light of eternity, how does this fit into my lifetime? It's about looking at all of the realities that have to do with time. It's like you asked me to meet at a certain time. If you had asked me to meet for 10 minutes, how often do we know people who ask to meet for 10 minutes, but they take up an hour? Okay, is that respectful of your time? We need to learn that time is managing us whether we like it or not. So we can't manage our time, but we can learn to say yes to ourselves and no to other people. And no, you've heard me say this before too, no does not mean never. No means not at this present time. So there's that time and timing piece. But this, in terms of what we're up to, this is where things get really interesting with this kind of template that we have, because this is where you get to negotiate. You get to, before you say yes or no to yourself, you get to say, I have a question, right? So it's very important to take in new information. And then the last piece is checking in with your spirit. And this is where coherence happens, where your inside and your outside match. And coherence is all about your spirit, but your spirit inhabits the skin we live in. So I like to say it's your big skin. It's a friend of mine, Nambi Eccles, wrote a wonderful book, What Color is Your Soul? And she talks about skin suits. What color is your skin suit? And that's because your skin suit just is an abode for your spirit, for this short tenure that we have on this planet. And then if it's coherent and you say yes, you're actually putting that sound, that music out into the world, because it's all inner dialogue, unless you're negotiating. It's all inner dialogue until you speak up and step out. And so that's the simple, it connects. Local is where your decisions come from, where your possibilities come from. Global is where your potential is going to manifest. Doesn't matter if it's good or bad, it's going to manifest globally. It's not going to stay local, as we know so well from all too recent history. So.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope people out there can use that as a tool to apply it and perhaps make their next big decision based on that toolkit. I know I personally have used it many, many times. But as I'm hearing it again for, I don't know, the 100th time, but time has passed since I last heard it, my perception and the way I'm hearing it is completely different again. And it actually makes me question, do you think as we are shifting through time and space right now, that blueprint is flexible?
No, the blueprint is not flexible. What's flexible is us. We're the ones that are changing. That blueprint is changeless. We have the frequencies. We can play the frequencies in water, and you can see that. You'll put the links up there for people to see the cymatics. No, love is changeless, but love changes us. So it's all about, Bianca, you and I met in November of 2009. We sat across a dinner table from one another, and we talked nonstop for several hours. And the last thing you said to me is, I need your phone number and your email. I said, great. And you said, I'm going to call you. I'm going to write you. I said, I look forward to hearing from you. How long did it take you to write me?
2 years. Took me 2 years. Took me 2 years until all of the steps came to my spirit that felt in alignment with the rest, and I was ready.
But why? Do you remember what you told me? Well, the first time we got together? You said, I knew if I called you, my life would change. And I wasn't ready for my life to change.
That's very true. It was as if, like, yeah, I knew deep down there was things that were not fully in alignment, and by getting, or by just being in the presence of you and the blueprint, it would just all make sense, and that which was not in the truth of that would really fall away. And that's what happens.
So it's about how we change in time, and what this is all about. What it requires is we have this template that shows up. It's so simple. I mean, a 5-year-old. We've done the education project. Great things happening with the education module. There's so much going on, B. But
okay, I just want to I want to pause for a sec, because I want to make sure we get everything. There's so much I want to cover. It's endless, but I really do want to go into a little bit of depth about what you are currently doing right now with this information, with this blueprint with Mereon, like what that
Yes.
sharing is and the impact that is. And then the other topic I want to cover, I'm going to say it now because time is time, is
Right.
just the way that the Mereon, this pattern, how it's associated with love, how it is interwoven with love, how it is love, and maybe you can explain about that as well. So I'm just going to put that out there, and you can we have a lot to cover.
Just that out there. Well, first of all, let me talk about two men who I have the greatest respect for, James Scroggs and Matt Hart. I met Matt 2 years ago in London, and we were talking about frequency, and we were talking about meditation, and we were talking about growth, and we were talking about change. And we began to talk. And we talked for over a year, about bringing this to the world. And then it was a year ago, December, when we were starting to move forward with quantum frequency, that Matt said, hit the brakes. Let's talk. We need to talk. This is bigger than that. We need to bring in a strategist, another business partner. And we brought in James Scroggs. And James, like Matt, they were both execs with MTV. And they knew that frequency, that music has the power to change the world. It can change you from the inside out. And we began to work. And we have been in this dance for 14 months now, getting ready to bring an amazing product to the world that they, in their brilliance and their genius, they spent a week kind of data mining my brain, pulling everything out, if you can imagine. And they've come up with a tool that will be out in the next couple of weeks, and it's called Pattern. And the website is coming, it's pattern.community, and it's about, COVID really brought this into really sharp refinement, that work and life and this dynamic balancing act that we're in, and living in love and compassion, is creating all kinds of stress, this dis-ease that we're going through with lockdown, being separated, many people living in close quarters. Pattern is designed for respite, for rest, for purpose, and for productivity. It's bridging all ages. All I would do is say bookmark pattern.community. And if people want to be on the mailing list to know more about what's coming out in the next couple of weeks, check in, because this is a transformative technology that it's a new market, because it's linking, it doesn't fall into meditation, it doesn't fall into self-help, because it realizes that yes, there's a me, but the only way that you can transform is with someone else. Someone else holds you accountable. Someone else catches that echo, that feedback from you. When you're able to share it, you hear yourself speaking and you're going, did I say that? Is that how it works? So it's all about realizing that we can only do it together. It's like I've always said, again, you can have it all. When you know what you want, you can have it all. You just can't do it all at once, and you can't do it all alone. There's no one-man band playing Carnegie Hall. So it's about a symphony, and that's what we're doing at the University of Colorado. We're taking students through the me, and then they're self-organizing as teams to take on different projects to identify new solutions for global problems. And this is happening through the Bachelor of Innovation program at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. And it's my great joy to be working with Dr. Colleen Stiles, Dr. Corinne Harmon, Carolyn Gary. It's just magical. And also Bodil Larsen-Ledet in Denmark is working with us. So we're having a good time, and we're actually going to be doing a study case study on this with all of our students and showing what's going on. So, and the reason we're doing it is to grow belonging in the world. And Dr. Herman is going to be our ambassador to the world.
Okay,
She's a powerhouse.
So Belonging the Education Program, we can talk like a minute about that, even though it deserves way more than that. I'm just being mindful of time. But just to give the listeners also, like, yes, you're about to launch pattern.community, but maybe you can give a little bit of more context, like what can they expect? Because if people listening have no idea right now what it is, but if you spark their interest, maybe they can sign up, or they can maybe they'll become more curious about it.
You were talking about tools. Is there a tool? Is there a technology that can help me use this to make this a habit? That can help me focus my intention? What is my intent as I step into this day? Pattern is that tool that will help you understand and see. There's what they call a training wheel that lets you see how your physical is connected to your emotional, how your emotional body is connected to your mental attitudes, your stress. Why, when you get stressed, do your emotions crash? Why, when your emotions crash, are you more vulnerable to being sick? Your immune system takes a hit. So it shows you how all of these internal realities are connected. Your spirit, your time, your intuition, your brain, your heart, your emotional body, and your physical body. If you don't have a physical body, forget it, you're gone.
So basically, it's a tool that makes you aware and connected to all different elements of yourself. And then through that awareness allows you to make decisions from a place of just alignment.
And keep it,
all parts.
You a record. It lets you keep a record. You're becoming part of a community. You have a training partner, someone that you're going to be actually committing to use this technology with. You're not doing it alone. This is not a solo practice. This is not going and sitting in a closet or your meditation room and oming for an hour. That's not what this is about. It's very different. It's a very focused, intentional, experience-driven.
Container and experience.
And we're building a global community. Pattern.community is going to be a global online community of people who are using this practice. And you know what it's all about? It is going to be the point of new social activism, where people can come together and go, I've got this vision. I'm sitting here. Does anyone else align with me on this? And imagine if you've got different competencies, people going, wow, I know this person or that person. I know how to get this out into the world. I know how to attend to quality control and risk management issues. Hey, guess what? I can help fund this. I can help communicate this. I can help make this operational. How can we bring it down to earth for earthly good so it's tangible, meaningful, and measurable?
Amazing. And I would love to ask, like, okay, so again, just for the help of everyone listening right now, like, this pattern has been decoded and then used in several and many different applications, one of them which is going to be this community. And then you were talking about the power of sound, and how the pattern has been decoded and then recreated into frequency. That's correct. And is there anywhere I can't even imagine, like, the different, and I mean, I've experienced some of it, is the sensation you have when you listen to this very sacred sound that almost like, yes. Is there any opportunity for people to listen to the frequency? Is that available?
Part of pattern.
Okay, so it's part of the whole program.
It is part of the whole program.
So people just have to sit tight until that comes out, and basically the blueprint of living life in harmony and integrity and in purpose. I love it. I can't wait.
So yeah, no, it's very exciting. And if people are interested to know about what we've been doing with the education project with belonging.life has more information there that anyone can probably digest. Everything is going to be undergoing major structural changes this year. But it's happening, but you can get a bigger sense of the education project that's been running in Italy for what, 16 years now? So
I
it's
would
like, I don't need to set an alarm clock, because one of my teachers, Sonia Ida in Merano, sends me a picture, a good morning picture, every single day at the same time. Sonia's become one of my first belonging teachers, has become my morning wake-up call.
Amazing. And I okay, so to also inform the audience, like the pattern has been used to apply into an educational context, how to educate children and adults, people of all ages. I think that deserves almost its own conversation because if we get started, but let's just say that it has had profound results in people. And I mean, I'm going to give you the stage for a little bit here, just share a little droplet about it. It deserves so much more, but just to get people, if they are interested in how this blueprint can transform education, you can share.
Well, first of all, what I would love to do is I'd love to do another session with you, with some of the faculty, with some of the people that I'm working with on the Emergence Network, Dr. Harmon, Dr. Gary, June Gorman, and some others, to talk very specifically about it. But belonging is not a curriculum. Belonging, first of all, the most important thing about education, teachers are the unsung heroes of the world. They spend more time with children than the parents do. At least they did before COVID, when the children were in school. But without teachers, we'd be in a far more uncivilized world than we are. So I started belonging in Educare as a rescue mission for teachers. Because I literally, bow down when I meet a teacher, because they have PhDs in courage for taking on the kids. And it's personal development. It's not professional development. It's not to make them a better teacher. It's to help them discover their core and find their why and their reason why they're an educator, and to reclaim that calling. But then after training about 50 or 60 teachers in Italy, they came to me and said, Lynnclaire, we have to figure out a way to bring this into the classroom. And so what I discovered is the only thing that they can control, a teacher can control in the classroom, is called classroom management. That means when they close the door, how they deal with the students that are in that classroom is at their discretion. They don't need to ask anyone's permission on how they deal with students. So I designed a classroom program for kids called Team Playground. And what it does is it turns over the social dimension of the learning environment, the students, make them responsible through a game of roles, tasks, and with different responsibilities every single day. And magic happens. We have so many stories that we could tell. I'll take 1 minute. I'll take a very quick story because it ties to Sonia. Sonia had a little boy in her class. He was 3 years old, and she was a baby school teacher, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in Italy. And he was so disruptive. He had 2 methods of communication: to use his fist or his teeth. He would fight or bite. That's how he communicated. No other way. Nothing was changing. She was getting desperate. 2 weeks into school, she's at the front door greeting her students. And he walks in and says, "Good morning, Mestre. Good morning, teacher." "Who's this little boy?" He said, "I'm a dove." He was a peacemaker that day. He knew that on that day, his responsibility was to be a peacemaker, not a peace taker. And that day, doing that one simple role, his relationship with everybody in the classroom transformed, and his life changed. He's now 18, and the change was permanent. So we, in an interview, because Belonging Project was the first runner-up for the Copenhagen Index Award in 2007. And, you know, we're not about prizes, we're about the surprise. We're still here. It's, but interviewed, and the person interviewing her said, so what did you learn from this? And she said, I learned that if a 3-year-old can change like that, so can I. And so it's that simple. Because when you realize that your behavior, your words, your actions, your attitudes affect your relationship with others, everything changes. And that's what he wrote.
That's amazing, Lynnclaire. And I mean, everything you're sharing is so potent. And for educators out there, if you're listening to this, or anyone who feels resonant with this, how can they find more about the belonging and Team Playground?
They can just go to belonging.life and explore until their heart is content, and then they can call. They can send an email. That's the easiest way to reach me. Lynnclaire at belonging.life or Lynnclaire at Mereon.org.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Do you have a few more minutes?
I do.
Okay, I would love to just kind of circle back and come back to kind of the theme, discovering your heart and living from the heart, living in love, because not only is the pattern and mirroring a blueprint for infinite applications, it's also a blueprint for living in love and living from the heart, as I've been taught by you. And perhaps you can just speak on your interpretation or your feeling, your knowing of what love is and what your journey of life has showed you about love, and kind of your commitment to self, to life, to love.
Absolutely. You know, you've worked with me enough to know that the first thing I do whenever I'm starting, whether it's a course or a class, I ask the question, what do you want? Tell me 8 things. What do you want more of in your life? I have yet to have anyone not say love. No one. I remember when we did the experience in Canada and we started talking about visions and values and talking about love. And I remember a young man, he was off to my left, just going, I don't know what's happening here, but this is the most intimate dialogue I've ever had. Do you remember? And he said, it's so safe to talk about something that's so personal and so meaningful. I feel safe talking about it. It's because we're talking about love in an environment where nobody cares what you're wearing, nobody cares where you came from. We only care that you're in the room and you're there because you want to know. You want to know that you belong. It's an existential desire that we all have. Where did we come from? How did we get here? Where are we going? And what matters, what lets us live in this moment, is knowing that we belong, knowing that we matter, knowing that we're lovable, believing that we're lovable, knowing that we're good enough, stopping all this existential nagging ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? Am I this? Am I that? Am I too much? Am I... Stop. Breathe. You're lovable. Relax. You're good enough. You're here. Nobody ever, you know, people will be listening to this and they'll say, how did I get here? How did I even get this link? Where did it come from? It's because you're supposed to hear. You're lovable. If you know in your heart, if you can just breathe in the fact that you're lovable, your life will change in an instant. Because we come from love, because conscience, our sense of morality, right and wrong, comes from our willingness to be conscious. And when we are conscious, we harmonize with the field consciousness that we're part of. And that's where, the pattern is a rainbow, this knot that we're talking about that you'll see. And when does a rainbow appear? Does it appear because you're looking at the light? No. It appears because you're facing life. You're facing a storm. You have the light behind you. That's why there's a halo behind a saint. The light's behind them. It's not about celebrity. It's not about personality. It's not about glamour. It's not about ego. That's why the only reason I'm doing this interview is because it's you. Because my relationship with you. I don't need anybody to know who I am. That's why I said, are we doing this audio? And you said, no, audio and video. I haven't done this since 1997. This is not about me. It's not about me, B, and it's not about you. It's about us. It's about the royal we. Because it can't be, we all know what cult of personality does. It's a setup for someone for a big fall.
Thank you so much, Lynnclaire. It's so beautiful. It reminds me of something you always used to tell me, and I still share it with other people, and it's about turning the me when you write me, flipping it over, and what do you read? It's we. And
and Bianca, share somewhere page 144 of the book, the first book. Okay,
I will.
That's what love is. That's how you define love, and that's what matters. We all have to define what love means for ourselves. But when you know you're lovable, it becomes real easy to understand what love is about.
Thank you so much, Lynnclaire. And it brings up so many questions. Like, I know there's like a pandemic of people not feeling lovable and not feeling good enough. And, there's so much out there for them to compare themselves to. And is there anything that helped and supported to guide you into loving and self-acceptance?
Stop comparing yourself to anybody. You're unique. You're stardust. You're made out of stardust, and you are totally unique. Okay? You're one of a kind. The universe made you and threw away that blueprint. Okay? But the universe left this imprint of itself in you. You are the creator. You are a creation observing itself. You are love. And love, that universal love, is begging you to look at yourself and say, do you see who you are? Do you see who all creation is? Your love. See who you are. And so it's, be gentle with yourself. These are not easy times that we're all living through. I'm in lockdown again. COVID, the variants are just running rampant here. So love the one you're with. Love the skin you're in first. Love yourself. Be gentle. Remember that the only thing that can injure your closest relationships is needing to be right or needing to think you're in control. Surrender those two things, and all of a sudden things are going to ease up a whole bunch. Just breathe and do the best you can, and know that, guess what? The best you can do is good enough. It gets better together. It really does. It gets better together.
Lynnclaire, thank you so much. This was such an enriching and uplifting conversation. Such an honor to have you. I'm so grateful for our friendship, for our relationship, our community, and the journey that we've been on together. It's so enriching. Thank you again. And if anyone has any questions for Lynnclaire, I'm going to put all of her contact. The best way to reach out, learn more, all of that information will be below in the description. And with that said, Lynnclaire, I'm already excited for the next one because I just from talking to you right now, I have a list of questions for the next. So
okay, great. Well, I look forward to it. We'll set it up. Let me know and we'll get on. I would love to have you meet Luke Hoffman. It'd be fun to bring a mathematician into this.
totally.
And ask him, why did he say Mereon is taking us to the heart of creation?
Yeah, like what is the mathematics of love? How do we decode? How do we deconstruct the discovering or remembering? What did you call it? You didn't discover your heart,
I recovered my heart.
You recovered your heart. How does mathematics allow us to recover our heart? That would be a cool interview. Let's do it.
It's the music. It's the music. It's the frequency. Make sure to have anyone who hears this podcast go to Mereon.org and look at the video and see how an inaudible frequency, a theta brainwave frequency, less than 8 hertz, which is supposed to do nothing if you resonate water with it, generates the complexity of the Mereon Matrix in 3D. And
Okay.
it matches your heart and your brain. So, and all that is there. So we'll talk about that. Yeah, it's really cool. So
Awesome. So thank you again. Thank you so much. Until next time, blessings.
Blessings, big love to Jose.
Will do.